Right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, after one Saturday, here in the month of October, there's only four teams who can still say that they have not lost a game within Big Ten conference play. And two of those teams happen to be one, the team that won the league last year in Oregon, and the other, Ohio State, who went on to win the national championship. Now, last year we saw Oregon and Ohio State meet twice. Of course, that nail biter during the regular season in Eugene, and then, of course, in the Rose Bowl, which was the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. And of course, we saw Oregon get boat raced in that game, courtesy of the Buckeyes, en route to their national championship. Now, they met twice last year, and there's a possibility of them meeting twice again this year. Now, along with Oregon and Ohio State, we've got Michigan and Indiana, who are both still undefeated within Big Ten play. And of course, in the case of Indiana, they are undefeated overall. Now, when you look at things right now, I still think, with all of that said, that Oregon and Ohio State are still, in my opinion, the class of this league. Okay, we could see Indiana upset Oregon this Saturday. We got to wait and see. But nonetheless, you look at Ohio State, and through their first five games of this college football campaign, they have not allowed one single opponent to reach double digits. Matter of fact, they've only given up 25 points so far this season, as they've made a seamless transition from Jim Knowles as their defensive coordinator, who is now at Penn State, to Matt Patricia, the former Detroit Lions head coach. And offensively, the Buckeyes have enjoyed no drop off at quarterback, and going with Julian Sayin, the youngster. Quality running backs, quality wide receivers, a solid defense. As for head coach Ryan Day, he continues to have his pipeline to the National Football League in regards to his roster. Same thing with Dan Lanning, because all Dan Lanning has done there in his 3 years at Oregon is win. In 3+ years with the Ducks, he's 40-6. You look at things right now. After beginning this season against some cupcakes, we just saw Oregon about a week and a half ago go to Happy Valley and not only defeat Penn State, but they might have broken the spirits of James Franklin and his program in the process, as we saw the Nittany Lions lose last Saturday to a previously winless UCLA squad. Okay, but nonetheless, the Ducks are ranked third in the nation. And if Oregon is able to get past an undefeated Indiana team this Saturday, they have a very good shot, okay, as far as getting back to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game for a second consecutive year. Now, like Ryan Day, Dan Lanning has had to break in a new quarterback in Dante Moore. And of course, offensively, the Ducks don't seem to be phased by it. While, like Ryan Day as well, his roster, speaking of Dan Lanning, is filled with a ton of talent on both sides of the football. So, with all of that said, you ask yourself, are Oregon and Ohio State the two best teams in the Big Ten? And I'm going to say yes. And this is no disrespect to your Indianas, no disrespect to your Michigans, your USCs, and your Illinois of the world. But I think, in my opinion, that Oregon and Ohio State are just a class above everybody. They're not slated to meet each other in the regular season. And of course, that's never a guarantee anymore with these expanded conferences. And I talked about this before last year with the expanded college football playoff, the possibility of seeing teams meet more than once during the season. But nonetheless, there's a possibility that we will see these two teams clash not only in Indianapolis, but also, excuse me, in the college football playoff. And just for the sake of argument, let's say Oregon and Ohio State do meet in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship in December. It's one of those where there's going to be a lot on the line, clearly higher seeding. for the college football playoff. Definitely a first round bye at the very least. And depending on how things go, of course, the seeding process has now changed. Not necessarily does a conference champion get a top four bid, but nonetheless, still possibly, depending on how the regular season works out for both of these teams, maybe both of them get first round buys. We have to wait and see. Again, there's a very strong possibility. I like each one of these teams' chances. It's not a guarantee. I look at Ohio State. They got to go to Champaign on Saturday, and I know that Ryan Day is going to have his team ready to play. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay, Brett Bielema's Illinois squad is going to, make them work. They still got the Penn State game at the beginning of November, but of course, if you're a realist, you know that James Franklin's teams don't do well against top 10 opponents. For me, the big one that I'm looking at for Ohio State, of course, is to finish the season in Ann Arbor against Michigan. And of course, there's no love lost between Michigan and Ohio State. The Wolverines have beaten the Buckeyes in each of the last 4 years. And on top of that, the way that the game last year ended in Columbus, I guarantee you that's not sitting well with either side. Okay. On the flip side, for Oregon, you look at the Ducks. Like I said, they've got an undefeated top 10 opponent coming to Eugene this Saturday. The Ducks are going to be favored in that contest when they take on the Hoosiers. But for me, if Oregon is able to get past Indiana on Saturday, I'm looking at that last month of the season, the month of November. And Oregon has some very interesting games. They got to go to Iowa on the 8th of November. And talent wise, yes, Oregon is better. But, a trip to Iowa City is never easy, especially if that turns out to be a night game. We've got to wait and see. And then the last two games of the regular season for the Ducks, they host USC. USC has a good team this year in the Lane Kiffin on the 22nd of November. And then finally, they finish up in Seattle against the Washington Huskies. And Washington is an improved team from last year as well. So there are still hurdles for both of these teams to clear. But like I said before, I still like the possibility of them meeting up, uh, you know, in the Big Ten championship game. And then also there's a possibility of meeting up in the postseason. However, I think this time around is going to be a little bit different because being that the seeding is changed and the top four seeds are not necessarily going to go to conference champions like they did last year, we're not going to have a scenario like we did last year where Ohio State was the eighth seed taking on Oregon, the top seed. Okay, because anybody knows Ohio State was seeded too low, and this is even before they went on their run last year. And you can make the same case about Notre Dame as well. So I think now that's going to be cleared up a little bit. So you're not going to see an Ohio State Oregon in an on-campus game in round one. You're not going to see Ohio State Oregon in a quarterfinal matchup. I think at the very earliest that we would see Oregon and Ohio State, hypothetically speaking, in the postseason would be the semis if both of them were to get that far. But nonetheless, I truly do feel that these are the two best teams in the Big Ten. We're going to, definitely the rest of this month, we're going to start to see, not just in the Big Ten, but all around college football, the true contenders really begin to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. And then, of course, come November, you still got to worry about the upsets, this, that, and the third. But from what I have seen on the gridiron for this part of the college football season, I think Ohio State and Oregon have really distanced themselves. Ohio State made a statement in week number one when they shut down Texas. And then, of course, we saw them go to Seattle a couple weeks ago against a very competitive Washington team, beat them by 18 points, and then we just saw them destroy Minnesota at home last Saturday. And then, of course, in the case of Oregon, like I said before, the Penn State win was big for them. And I really want to see what they do against Indiana and Kirk Cignetti's team. Very good squad that is going to be making the trek to Eugene for this Saturday. But nonetheless, I feel like the Ducks and the Buckeyes are separating themselves from everybody else in the Big Ten. If both of them can survive their test this week against ranked opponents, I think that is going to further solidify their chances. So let's see if the Ducks and the Buckeyes keep on taking care of their business, get back to the college football playoff, and potentially meet there once again this January. But, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, you know what to do. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, I will give you that follow in return. And the same goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you're on Facebook, be sure to check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.